Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar, I Learn to Read with My Toes. I'm Kim, CEO at Mendability, and we created this workshop to help the parents who have issues teaching their children how to read. Usually lower functioning brains, you would say, or?
Yes, well, it will, in fact, this is a system that we're going to show you that will work with any issues with reading. We have kids with dyslexia, kids on the spectrum, kids with a learning disability. They will all benefit.
We're going to, just a little bit of housekeeping before we move on with this. There's going to be a Q&A at the end. If you want to submit your questions ahead of time by chat as they come to you, then when it comes for the Q&A, then we'll go through the questions one by one. I'm going to do one last check to make sure that you guys, that we see everything. Can you say, can you tell us if you are hearing and seeing everything properly? Just say yes. Just in the chat box. I'm not seeing anything in the chat box. Ah, okay. Yes. All right, thank you. Awesome. All right, go back to the presentation. And Claudie, the floor is all yours.
Great. I like it when I'm the only one to talk. And you know me, for those who have been doing the seminar with us, well, the podcast, I can say that we do with Kent, we have a lot of fun, but that led to so many questions from you that we decided, okay, we're going to go deeper into the topic of how to teach a child to learn and maybe have some fun with it. So as you can read, we want to make a difference with kids who are facing so many difficulties, and also the kids who just cannot tell us why it is so hard. So simply going to the topic, this is what we are going to be talking about. So as you were told, please have your questions as we are going to be looking at them and answering as well as we can, of course, as we go. So the first thing that, sorry if I'm moving my chair so much, I really want to be right there in the center. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is what is learning, right? Is it simply you look at something and then you know it? Or you rehearse an information and then it means that you have learned it? Well, what we are doing, the first thing that we are doing when we're learning is we're changing our brain. Our brain is different every time we learn a new fact. So how does that happen? Everybody knows that knowledge is stored in the brain, but we're going to see together that it is really in the tiny details. What is that picture? For those who have been doing Mendability for a while, you may recognize something that you saw on our website. This is the end of a neuron inside the brain. We call it a synaptic button, but it doesn't really, it's not the most important thing that we want to know about it. This is where everything happens when we learn. Everything happens there when we remember and when we are recalling the knowledge to make it useful. What is the first component? Well, the answer is there. The first component of learning is serotonin. Serotonin is one of those messengers that we have in the brain that go from one cell to the next, transfer a message, and then it goes all the way as an electrical signal, and then it reaches the other end, and it keeps on bouncing into the next cell and then coming back. Not only serotonin is doing that, we are talking about this particular messenger because it is in charge of learning. So you probably want to have a lot of serotonin when you plan to learn. And when we talk about a lot of our kids, those on the spectrum, the kids with ADHD, you may want to know that their main component of learning, serotonin, is low. By birth, by genetics, this is just the way they have life coming to them. Because serotonin is low, the ability to learn is decreased. Bad news, there is no medication that you can take that will increase serotonin. But for those who are doing the therapy, and I hope most of you are, and if you are not, you are going to sign up quickly, we can ask the brain to produce more serotonin. We can do that. That's not the topic of the day. We will talk about that another time, I guess. But okay, you have it in mind. Serotonin is the first component of learning. It is one of the messengers of the brain, and it is transferring the element of knowledge. So it is right there. We want to have a lot of it, and we want it to flow easily from one cell to the next. Okay, let's start with our first lesson for you, the parents listening or watching the seminar. I hope that you are watching because I'm presenting to you something that I would like you to learn. Okay, what is it? I know that I have parents who right away know what that is. It could be an I and an O that have been connected together, or it could be a beautiful symbol meaning something in Greek. Well, in fact, it is a letter. And for most of you, that's the experience of children we are teaching reading. They are faced with looking at something that has a meaning for us, but probably not for them. This information you are receiving by vision, and now I'm going to give you the sound of it. This is the letter in Russian to say the sound or the letter F. It's not F, it's F. And now that you have a visual information and auditory information, do you know it? Have you been able to store this information somewhere? So learning is certainly grabbing a new information, finding where we are going to store it, finding a logic, and maybe an emotional content. So one of the other elements of learning is experience. Sometimes we'll just learn things because we have experienced a good thing. And so we remember, like that brown thing on that plate, I would love to have some, because it totally looks like something that I have had experience with. I have seen it. I did not hear it, but I for sure smelled it. And then I felt its elements of pleasure. So experience is a very good element for learning. But how do you have children experience the alphabet or reading? On this slide, you see the doors by which learning happens. We just had two experiments right there together. You saw a letter, then you heard what it is in a different language. And probably we have to admit that when we are teaching our children alphabet or reading, we are giving a visual information, we are giving an auditory information, and those information are processed and go into the brain. Hopefully they are stored and then they can go back. So learning is essentially first of sensory information. I mentioned serotonin because as an element of learning, serotonin is the translator of sensory information getting into our brain to give us new information. I hope you remember that I mentioned as well that children on the spectrum, children with Down syndrome, children who have had a trauma at birth, well, those kids do not have a lot of serotonin, and certainly not enough to process properly the environment as it is transferred to them through vision and audition. This is the only two we're going to talk about right now. So first difficulty for kids, their information is coming in, but when it gets into the brain, it does not really produce the result that it should have. So when we learn, we look, we listen, we have the information go inside the brain. From the brain, it sort of gets into various areas so that it makes sense. What happens then is the neuron talks to several neurons, and eventually at the end of the road, you have the final massive change of the brain, which is an information, a memory, something that we can then recall and bring back and use in a very smart way. Here is, again, a picture of what is going on in our brain. And yes, to learn is to grow brain. As you learn, you are, as I was mentioning to you, you are prompting the brain to connect the information and figure out where to store it. When these operations happen, then new cells, new branches, and you can see on that picture, we see some pieces of dendrites or portions of cell that are in construction. And many of my parents know, I tell them so often that it takes 10 to 12 days to grow a new connection between cells. So you can see some of them are in the process of growing, and you can see also the little buds on the body or on other branches, little buds of dendrites. They are going to grow. There is a lot of equipment to learn and to grow additional connections in the brain. What's the difference between humans and animal? Essentially, well, you may find other differences, but I will use this one because it talks about change and learning. We are, as human, made to change. We're made to learn. Your little kid, your little girl, your little boy want to learn. Why don't they then? That is something that we will definitely talk about. But be sure of that fact. Your child wants to learn. He is made to become better and better. And your job is to make that happen by presenting information and learning in the right way. So basically, there is not one child on the planet who is not made to learn and to be able to learn. So let's solve a few issues, maybe today and in the future. One of the very important parts of learning is the sense of belonging. What do I mean by that? Is information such as the letter presented to you before has to tell us something. It has to be connected to us in one way or another. If it's just a little drawing, like we saw the Russian letter, it becomes something pretty. We try to give it maybe a few more elements so that we can put it in a box where it belongs. It has to be sort of part of our own brain environment. How do we have those abstract information or those practical information become learning? We have to find how our kid learns. Understanding how our own children learn is going to make the difference in how we teach. I really like this painting. If you look at it broadly, like a whole information, it looks a little bit crazy. If you take only one information, for example, this person who's blowing a trumpet right in the middle through a window. Okay, you have looked at that, and then you look at the column that is right near this person and is sort of part of the roof. Depending on how you look at it, the column is either going in or going out. Concave and convex in French, and I have no one to help me to tell you what it is. So let's talk simply. Look at the floor where the column is starting. You can obviously see that the column is hollow. But as you go up and you keep thinking that the column is hollow, then there is basically no room for the gentleman to be even standing there. The stairs are going up or are they going down? And as you look, maybe those stairs or those floors, things don't make any sense. Well, this is the universe of your kid with autism, your kid on the spectrum. She is able to see the things that you're showing, but a lot of those things do not connect together. They don't make any sense. Keep this image in your mind until the time you sit down at a desk to teach your child. Remember that one. I have another picture to show you. If I ask, okay, what do you see here? Well, I can hear some of you would say, well, I see a lot of dark green dots. I see yellow dots, and well, we see dots. Is there a meaning to that? Not really. It's just, well, I don't want it on my walls. It's kind of not very pretty. Well, this is a painting from a famous French painter, Seurat, and he created a new style of painting. Now, on the right-hand side, we have trees. We have a river. We have maybe a castle on the left. All of that has a meaning. But the first experience was a bunch of nothing that you don't really like. All of those pieces of information to tell you what you need to give your child for that child to learn. We need a meaning. Anything you want to teach needs to be explicable. You need to be able to define, to give all kinds of information about maybe color or purpose. Meaning is crucial. Then I mentioned a little bit earlier, it has to make sense to your child. Your child sees things and likes things in his own way. So what you are teaching has to be fitting how your child lives the environment. The third element is almost encompassing everything else. It has to lock into a specific place in the brain. I call it anchors because I like that term, and visually it looks like, those sort of hooks that grab to things. So we want this new information to mean something, to have an emotional content or be acceptable by your child. And we absolutely need for your child to remember, meaning to learn. We need ways to keep this information inside the brain in a useful way. I have now more information for you about meaning. How do you find meanings for the things that you explain to your child? We know that that child sees and perceives things differently. So you have to gather how your child is living the environment, know your child as much as you know him, and give him a solution to the question, what is that? The emotional content. I know that every one of you around the world, and I'm so happy we are in 60 different countries, all of you I could hear said, oh, because really that is so cute. We may not know if it's a boy cat, a girl cat, it's a girl cat, it's a pink, and it just gives you an emotion. You just cannot help it. Oh, maybe you hate cats, but this one is so cute. It is babyish, and it's pink under his little paws. Adorable. So this is a piece of information that is easy to understand, that has a meaning, and has also a sense of attachment to you and hopefully to your child. So that we are not going to teach about cats, but this emotion that you had spontaneously, you have to figure a way to give that kind of emotion that is spontaneous to your child as you teach. So I mentioned one of the messengers of the brain, serotonin. Serotonin is in charge of learning, but also of relaxing, of dealing with stress, of contraction of long muscles, like lots of different roles. It works beautifully in company of the other element of knowledge, which is called dopamine.
Hey, Claudie, sorry
Yes.
to interrupt you, but when last time I saw you do that that training on learning, and you showed the cat, right after that you tried to then teach them the letter F again. Do you remember?
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could do that. I know you cannot redo the experiment where you had the guy falling, but we can do the one with the cat.
Yeah, well, this is what I was a little bit trying to do with the little kitten. Let us go back to it because I don't get tired of it. If, as Kim was saying, if I was teaching you this letter, I could make it belong to the kitten in any way, like it could be a feline or it could be his name. These are elements that would make the information memorable. We do experiments when we have people around us, and sometimes I have a person stand up, and then I ask that person to try to fall, to realize that the brain does not let us. Every time you give additional experiments or experiences, you are making sure that learning and remembering are working for your child. Does it make sense for you, Kim?
Yeah, and I realized that it was silly of me to interrupt because there's no way for us to know if the people on the other side actually learned the letter.
Well,
I remember it was interactive and they told us what it meant and
yes,
everything. It's like, never mind.
we are interactive right now, in fact, because we have a chat box. So you cannot draw the letter, I know that, but you can maybe type the English or French similar letter, right? So you try, Kim will tell me how many people got it right, and I will move on. Okay. I will not repeat what I was saying about dopamine. We love that messenger of the brain. It is a positive messenger. It transfers good mood, motivation, memory, crucial, and the sense of pleasure. If you do not have dopamine, you don't have any of those. And I can name at least two conditions in which dopamine is just drying out, we could say, from the brain of those people. Dopamine, you want also to know, is in charge of the control of movement. So your children who are hyper, as you describe them, always on the move, running in every direction, know that their issue is their dopamine function is not really perfect. And why are they not able to control their movement using their dopamine? Because serotonin is, we could say, the key that opens the door so that dopamine can work. Not enough serotonin will mean poor memory, poor motivation. Those elements are inflicted to your kid. Your kid will be motivated when dopamine is high and when serotonin is perfect. Right now, this poor kid cannot pay attention, cannot be motivated to get better at whatever you're teaching, and is not really feeling good, and his memory is almost non-existent. The two conditions I was suggesting a minute ago, Parkinson's disease, which is a complete loss of dopamine, well, the person moves constantly and cannot stop. This is a very terrible disease. The second one, where dopamine is at stake, is dementia, one of them being Alzheimer's. In dementia, the first problem is dopamine decrease. And as I was saying for serotonin, there is no medication to increase serotonin production. There is neither something that can boost dopamine, make it work better, or increase it in some way. I cannot say there is not at all, because there is a form of dopamine medication that has such terrible side effects that typically it's given only really if the patient needs to stand up for a few minutes, for example, in Parkinson's. Well, the good news of mendability is that, as I was telling you about serotonin, it is possible to ask your brain to produce more dopamine. Here it is. The sense of smell is the main tool to increase dopamine production. Here I mentioned research that's been done basically around the world in all the neuroscience buildings in the universities. The studies on the impact of smell. The impact has been measured on the animal model because it's unfortunately for them easy to open their cranium and put a little tube to measure the addition, the increase of dopamine production as they do different things. And definitely smell is the one that wins the biggest increase in dopamine. Smelling will increase what has been told to us by scientists by 100%. Smell, you have twice as much dopamine. Because we are mammalians. Yes, we are. So our reaction to the stimuli is completely similar to what is checked in the animal. So smell, more dopamine, more memory. Guess what? For those who are doing their therapy every day, they have invitation to get your child to smell as often as possible. That means a few times a day. Having this deliberate sniffing of wonderful smells. What happens when you smell is almost magical. If it did not show us a picture that is not very pretty, but still look at what happens when someone smells. Look at those arrows. The sense of smell is directly connected with all other brain areas dealing with the environment. That explains why if you smell something, a lot of things happen in your brain. It sort of revives and gives energy. I'll give you an example, and I think we have a delicious photo coming up. Maybe not this one, but it will be coming. So these are a little bit of a review of what dopamine does, right? Control of movement. More dopamine, your child will be able to sit down until you're done talking. If you don't talk too long, this child will be motivated to stay and learn, will want to make the effort. So what we are telling you is always based on research. And we have very often connected with Professor Leon. He was one of the scientists that many, many years ago measured the increase of dopamine in the brain on the animal model. And later on, he studied the impact of mendability on the children with autism. What he found was that, what I was telling you, 100 more, let's say 100% more dopamine when you smell something pleasurable, but also an increase of something that is called norepinephrine, which is I would say, the element of memory, but also one of the fertilizer to grow brand new neurons. So do we want additional dopamine? Yes, we do. So that's our start, in black. Then you smell and you'll have twice as much dopamine. And of course, there is better. What he has demonstrated, and many more after him, is that if you pair smell to another nice sensory information, you go all the way to 400% of your basis of dopamine. Sensory association, combination, is helping the child to be motivated, to remember, to understand, to learn. What do we do with that wonderful information? Well, we continue gathering information from scientists, one of them being Professor Meany, who discovered that gentle touch, soft touch on the back, on the head, anywhere, increases serotonin production. How can it get better than that? We had the question, now we have the answer. In order to learn, your child needs serotonin and dopamine, and now we have a way to increase it. So going further into what learning means gets us back a little bit towards the basic things that we can do and are so simple, like smelling or touching a soft object, looking at beautiful art. All those are building components of learning that your child may not have as you start, right? So I have a question for you, and I will ask Kim today. Kent was there, did the same experiment with me last week. I would like you parents to type in the chat box if your child knows the alphabet, because that's really where you go first, right? We teach the children the alphabet. So I give you just a few minutes to type yes or no in the chat box, and then Kim will not give me a number, but an approximation. We have a majority of parents who have a child who knows the alphabet or not. So are you seeing some answers coming up, Kim?
Yeah, I started a poll. And all
Yeah.
you have to do is pick yes, some, or nothing yet. And so far, we're seeing a strong 83%, 84%, 85%
Keep going.
are saying yes, some.
Okay.
6%. I think it's pretty clear that most parents would say, yep, my special
Excellent.
person knows some of the alphabet.
Okay. Second question. That may be a little similar. Can your child recite? So I will be generous with that question. Like, if he can recite some of the letters of the alphabet, because it is a big job. There are many letters, and small children will learn not as fast to recite. So what kind of answers do we get for that, Kim?
So far, yep, 90% are saying yes, 92%.
Wow.
I'm just gonna give it a few seconds for everybody to get a chance to click on the buttons.
Do you want 100%? Come on.
No, I'm not saying 90% people have answers. 92% of the parents are answering yes, my special person can recite at least part of the alphabet. Oh, it just dropped because we got our fourth vote for no.
Okay. Well, we have one more question, and then we are going to have everybody calling into why are we doing this webinar? So the question is simple. You have a flashcard with the letter F. You show it to your little or big person. Is he or is she able to tell you what it is? Again, the answer is yes or no. Isolation,
Very
we
different.
show
The
the
answers
flashcard.
is 50-50.
Okay. Well, we can say that 50% of our audience has a dream that is going to be shattered. If your child can read the alphabet, recite the alphabet, but is not able to identify one when it's not with the group, your child does not know the alphabet. Sorry. Your child knows a rhyme. Sometimes there is a music to it, so he knows a song, but he does not know the letters. So your child is not even close to be able to read. And that is our purpose today, right? Understanding how it works and then doing it the best possible way. So the first element of learning, if you remember, so we have the components, we have the serotonin, we have the dopamine. And the first thing that needs to happen is understand, right? Your child needs to make sense of it. This is how we remember. So if you were showing the letter that is right now on the screen and ask your child, okay, what is that? If your child has enough words, he will say, a bubble, a ball, a ring. So what your child will tell you is what comes to his mental image when he sees a circle. A circle is either a toy or something to be pretty. A letter, are you sure? And this is where we start having the problem of teaching because of different learning. If you cannot explain a letter, your child will not learn it. Keep it, memorize it, and reuse it when reading. And you cannot explain letters. I have no idea who decided that that is O. It's even O in French. I don't know in other languages. But somebody one day, I don't know when, in a forest, in a cave, said, okay, when we do a circle, we're going to tell the kids it's an O. All right. It's a problem. None of the letters mean anything. And sometimes with this letter in particular, it could be a lot of things besides a letter. So let's go back to pleasure, if you don't mind, because I may have broken a few hearts, and I hate that. So the good news is we're going to give you the method, right? I want to take you to an experiment. And we have a very nice picture here. Let's say you are walking in a mall, just thinking about your taxes that is upcoming or a present for grandma, and suddenly you smell, okay, we're going to say cinnamon because it's on the text, and this is one of the most powerful to bring up memories. You smell cinnamon and suddenly you remember the kitchen of your grandma, the color of the bowl. I remember the bowl was pink in my case. And you can see grandma's apron, and she was cooking cinnamon buns for you. This is what I was showing you with a picture of the brain. This is what smell does to you. It binds information together. It gives you anchor, and you cannot forget. If there is a meaning, an emotion, and a beautiful sensory information. How about we start talking about the letter A? I don't really like the letter A. And you know why? It's because, well, it can be said all kinds of ways. You cannot tell your kid, okay, already to start, that's the letter A. It's not a tent, it's not a teepee, it's the letter A. But in fact, this is also letter A, and this is also letter A. Like there is at least three ways to write the letter A. But it also continues in the mid-series for my brain because it also sounds differently depending where it is. Inside a word, on its own. So let's make a decision right now. After all what you hopefully have learned about how the brain works, how we learn what are the elements that are absolutely mandatory, we are going to call the letter A. A for apple. And we are going to only use a capital letter. we have so many different activities with Mandability around recognizing letters by their appearance, their color, or their shape, that we always use capital letters, and it's plenty. Trust me, once you know one, you will have not too much difficulty to know the others. So this is the fruit. This is the sound. A for apple. We need more information. We have maybe the sound because I gave it to you, and we have a visual. That is not enough. We are going to use 4 different senses. You can write down the steps. This is how we're going to do. We are going to smell first. Easy for the apple. You can take a little bit of juice. You smell. And remember, when you smell, dopamine levels increase, meaning memory is ready to work for you. So we smell. Then we will look at this pretty picture of apple. Here you go. I'm going to show it to you again. We smell, we look, and we are going to do something else. We are going to feel it. Either you give the apple to your child so that he manipulates it, or better, as we do with our multi-sensory core protocol, we touch our kid. We say, can I touch your cheek? Can I touch your hand? Suddenly the apple is no longer only a fruit. It has this soft, nice information to give it to you. We smell, we look, we are going to smell again. Then we are going to feel, to touch. You remember what happens to the serotonin when we do soft touch? We increase serotonin in the brain. So we have increased dopamine, we have increased serotonin, and we have built a beautiful set of information that all make sense. They all make sense. Now we are going to just finalize with a drop of juice on your index finger, which you're going to put on your beloved one lip. Okay, just a quick rub. Hopefully he likes apples. You can use any fruit and go basically all the way, any letter, any fruit, any vegetable, any candy. One of our moms is using a candy for taste. Why not? We don't have rules. What we want is a complete sensory panel of information that makes sense, that has an acceptability for your child, because it is only bringing really lovely information that the brain can take in.
Hey, I have a question for you here, Claudie.
Yeah.
You talk about the complete panel of sensory inputs. I understand the emphasis on smell and touch because of their importance on brain development and dopamine and serotonin. But what about involving things like moving around while you're, for the proprioception system, the vestibular system? I don't think you can do a whole lot with the anteroperception system, but
well, as you know, we have exercises where we do combine movement and sensory information. As we are learning the alphabet, we are going to maintain basically the pleasure of food. All of those lovely information which the brain wants to maintain for our survival. And even if your child is a picky eater, you can find something that this child will enjoy. So the combination of those makes many different senses, right? It means food, right? It means pleasure, and it means the letter that starts the name of that fruit. That's why we are staying in the area of those four, because they do make sense in life as well. It's a logic that if your child is old enough to have eaten any kind of food, those information are already open, ready to store, and you can add now the arbitrary information that is the letter. It's okay.
I got a question here from somebody. Sorry about the delay. I ended up interrupting the beginning of your other sentence. I want to ask it now instead of later, because it's pertinent to this particular area. She said, Jules is asking, how do I know if my child enjoys the smell? He's non-verbal about what he likes and what he doesn't.
Well, that's a great question, but I do not have a short answer. However, I think we will have a webinar specifically for the sense of smell and its power and how to use it. We do have a tool, an assessment that can tell if your child is actually processing that scent and is enjoying that scent. So trust me at the moment, because that would be a little longer to explain. Usually, if you have already done smells with your kid and he's not pushing you away, it's a good sign. Like, no resistance means most of the time acceptance. So don't feel that you did not get an answer, but you have some of the answer by the fact that your child is not resisting, so it's fine, right? So all the kids learn certainly differently, but all the kids have senses that we can help becoming more efficient. Serotonin, which is not high enough, does make the senses information sometimes a little bit unpleasant. This is why we go so slowly and we ask for permission. Like, respect is the essence of this way of teaching. Remember, we need anchors so that your child can keep the information. What we do, and I believe we do have the picture, I may go a little faster for that one because we are really near the end and I don't want to miss too many questions. So I allow you to read as I'm showing you the picture of the setting. This is a multisensory alphabet, and these are the elements that you need. You need a scent. Does not need to be an essential oil. It's just we put those because a visual is a great tool. Didn't we say that? So we need a scent, we need an image, we need a fruit, and the flashcard. Look at how abundant this information is. Suddenly, the sound of the letter is just, and the shape are just part of it. It's not just all of it. So next time you show the O to your kid and say, what is it? He will instantly recall the pleasures of orange. So the sound O will completely come, as well as the recognition of the shape. Add information. Make the information acceptable, understandable, and use the fantastic benefits of sensory information to teach your child. I was saying as we started that this system of reading is going to help any child who has any kind of difficulty. Now you say, well, where are the toes and all that? When we are doing the touch part, well, you are invited to do the tip of the nose, maybe the inside of the hand, and why not the toes? When you try, you will see how much fun your child has, how far it is from academic learning while it is really teaching. So learning to read with the toes or with the nose is the way to maintain the information in his memory. You have a question for me, right, Kim? That's why I hear a little bit of sound.
I've got a bunch of questions, and I know this is going to take us over the hour. I just want to tell everybody we're recording this webinar. If you need to leave to go to your next appointment, feel free. Everybody's going to get the recording. We're just going to stay on for those who can and answer every question. I'll actually have somebody who raised their hand and who would like to ask a question orally. Give me 1 second. Her name is Leonarda, and I'm going to allow you to talk.
That's so nice of you.
I think you are.
Hello?
Hello. Yep. So what is your question?
Oh, my question is, so can you apply that method for teaching other concepts besides letters? Like, for example, in math, the idea of before and after?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is part of our very soon project. How do you expand this system to learning other pieces of information? We can teach science, we can teach geography, we can teach math. We probably need a different type of organization that I will be very happy to tell all about in our next or soon to come webinar. But the answer is yes. Multi-sensory information will be an anchor to any form of information to be learned.
How long to smell in order to get the 200% dopamine boost, to double the dopamine? And I will, if you can also answer how long the effect lasts for.
Yeah. Really, as far as humans are concerned, I believe that in the fMRI studies, there were only 2 inhalation. Like they would send 2 puffs and ask the person to breathe deeply in. So 2 sniffs, that's pretty short. That would be 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and you would get the effect. Now, how long you can maintain the effect? Well, as soon as there is a dopamine boost, it's measured that it can last 1 hour to an hour and a half. That's pretty good.
What do you do if, because I know that presenting a smell to somebody's nose is a bit of an intrusive thing. You're right in their face, and a lot of kids resist that. Do you have other ways of exposing them to a pleasant smell that's less intrusive than just shoving something up their nose?
In particular, the essential oil that so much look like a medicine. So 2 drops on one of those little circle of cotton for makeup, or a cotton ball, or a toy, a little plush toy that you put some scent on, anything but something that would look like, oh, it's a medicine, or oh, it's a job. So be creative. As long as your child inhales or breathes, because a lot of kids on the spectrum do not have the sniff function. So you have to basically teach it gradually with patience. You can also have the scent on your hand and gently touch your child's face. However, we are talking about learning how to learning the letters and learning reading. We have not really approached reading yet because there was so much. So that will be part also of a next webinar. So we are working with children who understand that he or she will have to sniff, but we still use something very neutral that is not going to cause anxiety.
Thanks. Now a question that takes us a bit of a different direction. Well, I don't know. Maureen is asking us about conversion disorder. I think it used to be called hysteria, and it used to involve trauma. And one of the symptoms is not being able to speak or not being able to see. She's asking, sorry, I've lost the... Is conversion disorder also caused by low serotonin, she's asking.
Well,
do we know enough about this?
As you are mentioning, one of the cause is a trauma. Any trauma destroys serotonin. So there is no doubt that the majority of mental disorders that we know today are unfortunately linked to very low serotonin. And it's very unfair because a lot of those patients have perfect dopamine, but it's like they don't have it at all because their serotonin is low and cannot allow dopamine to function. So the answer is yes. And this system can be definitely applied to help a person to increase.
Sorry, to clarify, do you mean it's caused by a low serotonin level, or one of the symptoms is low serotonin levels?
The symptoms, what we see, is caused by a low serotonin. Right. And as you mentioned, it's often caused by a trauma that doesn't need to be a physical trauma like a car accident. Mm-hmm. A huge trauma will wipe out serotonin.
Two smells back to smell. Two questions about the smell. What smell increases serotonin? And do we ever use essential oils?
There is not really a scent that has been defined as increasing serotonin, but we know that any pleasurable scent will increase dopamine production. So maybe that's a mistake of words. There is now some studies on the effect of lavender. What has been studied is it helps young adults to sleep better. And this is only what we can say because this is what has been published. We also have received great news through science that lemon is a very powerful eliminating anxiety, if I can say. Like they would bring someone, cause a stress, like they would do that by placing something very cold on the arm of the person who is in the machine, and then send a scent of lemon. Then they measure the cortisol level, which is your measure of anxiety in saliva, before and after. After smelling lemon, the cortisol level was almost back to not present. So use lemon for your child who is anxiety. Use lemon all the time. That's my favorite.
Yeah, I also remember Michael Leon did a presentation on smell, and he was showing one of the studies that they tried to see if everybody would respond the same to smells. And he said that the same smell will light up different parts of the brain for different people. And it was part of a research project with the military because they were trying to find a smell that would be so nasty that it would just repel people. And he said in some countries what smells horrible smells like their favorite perfume, and then vice versa. It was a fun presentation. But so yeah, do we ever use essential oils? I guess yes, as one of the things that smell, but it could be anything, right?
Yeah, and in fact, that's why lemon essential oils are very convenient because they do smell really strongly the thing that it is made of. You want to look for organic and no blends if you plan to use essential oil, but that is not a necessity. You can create your own smell, like squeezing the peel of an orange or vanilla extract from the kitchen. Essential oils are very useful, but sometimes they could be too strong, and sometimes they can hurt the skin if the child touches. So yes, we use it, but it's not the only thing we use.
I got a question that I don't know if we can answer, but have a go at it, and you can tell us. Some doctors propose smelling via the left nostril in order to activate the right hemisphere of the brain. Any comment on that?
Yes, I would love to see the research, because the two nostrils join their information in the back. So we do have two olfactory lobes, but they do work in team. So I would be interested to see that research, because it seems difficult to make sense of, but if it has been studied, I'm ready to learn.
All right. Well, this is our last question. Thanks, everybody, for lasting that long with us. I know we were over. We're going to wrap this up unless somebody wants to ask one final question. I'm going to leave it open for a couple of seconds. Again, thank you, Claudie, for preparing all this. And if you have our email address, you're all going to be on our newsletter. If you have topics you would like us to explore, feel free to let us know. Otherwise, have a good week, everybody. Stay safe. And we're recording this close to Christmas, so Merry Christmas.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.